Karen Williams stood at the edge of her meticulously manicured lawn, fists clenched at her sides, staring down the very fence she had painted just the week before. A vivid cerulean blue, splashed with abstract designs, it transformed her ordinary backyard into a canvas that celebrated her vibrant spirit. But to the Homeowners Association, it was nothing less than a declaration of war. The email had come through just hours prior, warning Karen of a violation of the neighborhood's strict color palette. "This isn't just a color, it's a statement," she whispered to herself, but now her heart raced with what was to come. Tension thrummed in the air as Karen squared her shoulders and marched toward the community center, where the HOA meeting was already in session. She envisioned the smug glances from her neighbors, those who had always quibbled about the proper ways to maintain their pristine street. Among them sat Martha Jenkins, the self-appointed queen of compliance, and her disdainful gaze was enough to ignite Karen's resolve. Sliding into an empty chair beside the widow next door, Karen took a deep breath, recalling the national artist whose work had inspired her vibrant fence. He was her muse, but to the HOA, she was just another problematic homeowner. As the meeting kicked off, Karen found herself trapped amid discussions of lawn heights and mailbox styles. "The standard beige is timeless," Martha proclaimed, voice dripping with authority as she brandished a paint swatch like a coveted trophy. "Karen, our color restrictions are simple." But before Martha could finish, Karen interrupted. "What's wrong with a bit of individuality?" The room fell silent, tension curling the air between them like storm clouds. "Individuality?" Martha chuckled, her laughter sharp. "Where does that road lead? To chaos." Murmurs of agreement slithered through the crowd. Yet Karen felt the stirring of something deeper than frustration. It was a spark of rebellion. Fueled by the need for self-expression, she squared her shoulders. "I refuse to be another cookie-cutter house on this block." The words were out before she could stop them, hanging in the air like the pungent scent of freshly cut grass, daring anyone to challenge her. Across the table, a few heads nodded in surprise, and for the first time, the tide of the meeting seemed to shift. What had started as a demand for conformity now felt like the opening move of a chess game, with Karen poised to defend her freedom. But little did she know, the biggest twists were still waiting in the wings. The murmur of hushed whispers enveloped the room, and Karen could feel the weight of suspicious eyes upon her. Martha's glare could have melted ice, but there was a flicker of something uncertain in a few of the other homeowners. Fresh from her declaration, Karen felt emboldened as she caught the eye of Roger, her next-door neighbor, who had always appreciated her quirky style. "Let's put this to a vote, shall we?" the HOA president, Mr. Thompson, declared, glancing around the room with a blend of authority and disbelief. "Does Karen's fence violate our rules or showcase creative expression?" The choice felt monumental. As Mr. Thompson called for hands to be raised, Karen's heart pounded wildly. She watched as a few hands shot up in solidarity, including Roger's. But Martha's loyalists quickly drowned them out. They didn't just want conformity, they thrived on it, well rehearsed in their routines of adherence to the dull standards they had come to embrace. "Creativity can quickly spiral into disorder," Martha declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "What's next? Neon lawn gnomes." Laughter erupted, and Karen fought to maintain her composure, unwilling to back down. "Art is subjective, Martha," Karen retorted, her voice unwavering. "Who are we to dictate one's personal expression? My fence is not a threat. It's an invitation for dialogue." Martha, unperturbed, simply leaned back, arms crossed smugly. It was clear to Karen that Martha couldn't see beyond her own strict ideals, and that was the crux of her frustration. At that moment, Karen recalled during her research the artist behind her fence had won awards that celebrated * cultural identity and personal stories *. As the minutes crept by, the tension thickened. Mr. Thompson set down his gavel and glanced at the wall clock, noting there were still a few minutes left. "If anyone has further input, now's the time." Suddenly, another homeowner, Lisa, spoke up. "I think it's beautiful, Karen. And honestly, it gives this neighborhood a bit of character." A ripple of agreement flowed through the room, and Roger nodded enthusiastically beside her. "More character? Like weeds in our flower beds?" Martha shot back sharply, but the tide was turning. Shifting, the atmosphere buzzed with newfound energy. The pendulum began to sway in Karen's favor. Just as victory seemed within her grasp, a subtle voice piped up from the back. "I heard that artist's work is worth a fortune." The momentum shifted again, and Karen's heart leaped. But who was it that had spoken? Drifting through the growing chatter, she turned to find an unexpected ally in the shadows, one that could append her confrontation with the HOA entirely. The murmurs in the room grew louder, intertwining fact with speculation. Karen squinted through the crowd, trying to identify the voice that had stirred the meeting. She was facing an uncertain battlefield, and as each homeowner leaned in to listen closely, she felt the anticipation of a gathering storm. A slender figure emerged from the back, and to Karen's surprise, it was Mia, the quiet librarian who lived 2 blocks away. Mia was known for her deep passion for the arts and an individual style that often went unnoticed among the more boisterous members of the HOA. "Yes, that artist, Blake Carter, has pieces displayed in museums across the country," she said, her voice gathering strength. "His work is not just about color. It tells a story, and that fence is a part of it. Not a property violation." Karen's heart skipped as she met Mia's gaze. The librarian continued, "When I first saw it, I thought of the community's need for expression beyond the beige barriers we've built around ourselves. Isn't that what art is supposed to do? Challenge us?" Martha's expression faltered for just a moment, and Karen seized the opportunity. "You see, it's not just paint on wood. It's about how we live and grow in this neighborhood. Art can inspire." She felt a swell of confidence that surged through her veins, igniting the room once again. A few neighbors who had been quiet started nodding, their displeasure with the HOA's rigidity becoming apparent. They leaned forward, imbued with a sense of possibility. Perhaps they had become too comfortable in their boxes, Karen thought. If the fence could spark this kind of dialogue, maybe there was hope for a brighter, more colorful future for the community. "Let's not forget we all moved here for various reasons," Lisa added, her tone now more assertive. "Some wanted a less chaotic environment, but others sought diversity and creativity. We can't stifle that without losing what makes this area unique." The meeting buzzed like a live wire, as ordinary homeowners transformed into advocates for change, with Karen at the helm. The camaraderie felt electrifying, and Karen felt an urgency to solidify their collective voice. "Let's take a poll. If we can gather enough support, we could propose an amendment to the fence color policy." But before she could elaborate, Martha interjected forcefully, "This isn't just about one fence. It's about maintaining the integrity of our community. Integrity should include our creativity." Karen countered, undeterred. The energy began pivots toward her favor, the desire for individuality clashing beautifully against the sea of conformity. Martha's tightly controlled grin wavered, revealing a glimpse of her own unease. Karen noticed it, but a sudden thought overwhelmed her. Would the HOA let go of their grip on such restrictive rules? With the meeting drawing to a close, she sensed it was time to make one final push, bringing together both the doubts and hopes that intertwined within them. As the meeting drew to a close, Karen felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The homeowners around the table were no longer just a sea of faceless neighbors. They were individuals grappling with the conflict between conformity and self-expression. She knew she had to seize this opportunity and channel the energy in the room. "Look, I understand the desire for order and cohesion in a community," Karen began, her voice steady and firm. "But shouldn't that also include the freedom to celebrate our unique stories and perspectives?" She gestured toward the fence, the vibrant colors a testament to her passion. "This isn't just about paint. It's about the power of art to bring us together, to inspire dialogue and connection. Mia nodded emphatically, her eyes shining with determination. Exactly. We've become so focused on maintaining appearances that we've forgotten the richness that can come from embracing our differences. Karen could see the wheels turning in the minds of her fellow homeowners. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others leaned forward, captivated by the conversation. She knew she had to keep the momentum going. I'm not asking for a complete overhaul of the rules, she continued, but perhaps we could explore ways to incorporate more flexibility, more room for personal expression. After all, isn't that what makes a community truly vibrant? The silence that followed was deafening, and Karen could feel the weight of Martha's disapproving gaze burning into her. But then, from the back of the room, a voice piped up. I think she has a point, a middle-aged man named John said, his brow furrowed in contemplation. I've always enjoyed the unique touches that some of our neighbors have added to their homes. It adds character, a sense of individuality. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and Karen felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a middle ground, a way to preserve the cohesion of the neighborhood while allowing for personal expression. Martha cleared her throat, her lips pressed into a thin line. But what about property values? Surely, we can't allow every homeowner to do as they please without regard for the impact on the community as a whole. Karen couldn't help but feel a twinge of frustration. Property values aren't everything, Martha. What about the value of fostering a sense of community, of celebrating our differences? The debate continued, with arguments and counterarguments flying back and forth. Karen could feel the tension in the room, but she refused to back down. This was about more than just her fence. It was about the very heart and soul of their neighborhood. As the meeting drew to a close, Karen could see that the tide was turning. The homeowners were no longer united in their opposition. They were grappling with the complexity of the issue, weighing the merits of both sides. It was a start, and Karen knew that with persistence and a willingness to compromise, they might just be able to find a solution that worked for everyone. As the homeowners filed out of the community center, Karen could feel the air crackling with a newfound energy. The once stifling atmosphere had given way to a sense of possibility, and she couldn't help but feel a surge of optimism. Mia approached her, a warm smile on her face. That was quite a performance back there, Karen. I'm glad I spoke up, even if it was a bit unexpected. Karen chuckled, feeling a sense of camaraderie with the quiet librarian. I'm glad you did too. I think you really helped shift the tide back in our favor. Mia nodded, her expression turning thoughtful. You know, I've always admired your willingness to go against the grain. It's something I've always struggled with myself. But seeing you stand up for your beliefs, it's inspiring. Karen reached out and gave Mia's arm a gentle squeeze. You have more courage than you know, Mia. Don't be afraid to let your voice be heard. It can make all the difference. As they parted ways, Karen couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of determination. She knew that the fight was far from over, but she was buoyed by the unexpected support she had found in her fellow homeowners. As she made her way home, Karen spotted Martha and a few of her cronies huddled together, their heads bent in hushed conversation. She couldn't help but wonder what they were plotting, but she refused to let it dampen her spirits. Stepping through the front door, Karen was greeted by the sight of her vibrant fence, and a smile spread across her face. Don't worry, my friend, she murmured, running her fingers along the smooth surface. We're not going down without a fight. Over the next few days, Karen found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Neighbors she had barely spoken to before were now stopping her in the street, eager to discuss the fence and the ongoing debate within the HOA. Some, like Lisa and John, were firmly in her corner, offering ideas and suggestions for how to navigate the situation. Others, like Martha, remained stubbornly opposed, but even they seemed more willing to engage in open dialogue. Karen couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. She had started this journey feeling isolated and alone, but now she had a growing network of supporters who shared her vision for a more vibrant, inclusive community. As she sat down to pen a letter to the HOA board, outlining her proposals for a more flexible approach to architectural guidelines, Karen couldn't help but feel a sense of optimism. This was just the beginning, and she was determined to see it through to the end. Over the next few weeks, the debate over Karen's fence raged on within the HOA. As she had expected, Martha and her loyalists continued to push back, unwilling to budge on the strict rules that had governed the neighborhood for years. But Karen was undeterred. She had rallied a growing number of supporters, and together they began to formulate a plan to present to the HOA board. The key, they decided, was to focus on finding a compromise, a way to preserve the community's cohesive aesthetic while also allowing for more individual expression. One evening, as Karen sat at her kitchen table, poring over the neighborhood's architectural guidelines, her doorbell rang. Glancing out the window, she was surprised to see Mia standing on her doorstep, a determined look on her face. "Mia, what brings you by?" Karen asked, ushering the librarian inside. "I've been doing some research, Karen," Mia began, her voice tinged with excitement. "And I think I found a way to help your cause." Karen listened intently as Mia outlined her findings. Apparently, the neighborhood's guidelines were not as rigid as they had seemed. There were provisions that allowed for the incorporation of artistic expression into home exteriors, provided that certain criteria were met. The key is to frame your fence as a work of art, rather than just a cosmetic choice, Mia explained. If we can demonstrate that it meets the criteria, the HOA board may have a hard time denying your request. Karen's heart raced with renewed hope. "Mia, you're a genius. This could be the breakthrough we've been looking for." Together, they set to work, gathering the necessary documentation and preparing a formal proposal to present to the HOA board. Karen felt a surge of confidence. This time, she was armed with the knowledge and the support she needed to make her case. When the day of the meeting arrived, Karen strode into the community center with her head held high. Martha and her cronies were already seated, their expressions sour, but Karen refused to be intimidated. As the meeting got underway, Karen stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "Neighbors, I'm here today to propose a compromise that I believe will benefit us all." She laid out her plan, outlining the provisions in the guidelines that allowed for artistic expression, and detailing how her fence met the necessary criteria. The room fell silent as the homeowners listened, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. Finally, the HOA board president, Mr. Thompson, spoke up. "This is an interesting proposal, Karen. I must admit, I hadn't fully considered the artistic merits of your fence." Karen held her breath, waiting for his verdict. The next few moments would determine the fate of her vibrant creation and the future of self-expression in their community. The tension in the room was palpable as Mr. Thompson paused, his gaze sweeping across the gathered homeowners. Karen felt her heart pounding in her chest, the weight of the decision resting squarely on his shoulders. After careful consideration, Mr. Thompson began, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I believe Karen's proposal has merit." A ripple of surprise and murmurs swept through the crowd, and Karen could see Martha's face twist with displeasure. But before she could object, Mr. Thompson raised his hand, silencing the room. "The guidelines do indeed allow for artistic expression, provided certain criteria are met. And from what I've seen, Karen's fence does appear to meet those requirements." He turned to Karen, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I'm willing to give this a chance, but I want to see a detailed plan outlining how you intend to maintain the artistic integrity of the fence over time." Karen could scarcely believe her ears. She had braced herself for a fight, but instead, Mr. Thompson was offering her a lifeline. Overcome with emotion, she nodded eagerly. "Absolutely, Mr. Thompson. I'll have that plan to you within the week." As the meeting adjourned, Karen found herself surrounded by a mix of congratulatory and bewildered neighbors. Mia beamed at her, her eyes shining with pride, while Martha and her loyalists shot her withering glares. "You can't be serious," Martha huffed, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "This is a slippery slope, and you know it." Karen met her gaze, unflinching. "Martha, I understand your concerns, but this isn't about chaos or disorder. It's about finding a balance, a way to celebrate the diversity within our community." Martha scoffed, but before she could retort, Lisa stepped forward, placing a hand on Karen's arm. "I think it's a great idea, Karen. If we can find a way to incorporate more personal expression while still maintaining our community standards, it could be really special." Karen couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude. She had never expected to find such staunch allies in her fellow homeowners. But here they were, rallying behind her cause. As the crowd dispersed, Karen turned to Mia, a wide grin spreading across her face. "I can't believe it, Mia. We actually did it." Mia laughed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I never doubted you for a second, Karen. You've got a real knack for stirring up change." Karen shook her head, still marveling at the turn of events. "Well, I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you, Mia. This is just the beginning." With renewed determination, Karen set to work on her detailed plan, determined to prove to the HOA board that her vibrant fence was more than just a splash of color. It was a testament to the power of self-expression and the richness that could be found in a community that embraced its differences. Over the next few weeks, Karen poured her heart and soul into crafting the perfect proposal for the HOA board. She enlisted the help of Mia and a few other supportive neighbors, and together they meticulously planned out a maintenance and preservation strategy for the fence. The key, they decided, was to position the fence as a living, evolving work of art, one that would change and adapt over time, just as the community itself did. They proposed an annual maintenance schedule, where Karen would work with a local artist to refresh and revitalize the design, ensuring that it remained a dynamic and engaging centerpiece for the neighborhood. When the day of the presentation arrived, Karen stood before the HOA board, her proposal in hand, and delivered a passionate plea for a more inclusive and expressive community. She spoke of the power of art to inspire and connect, and of the importance of celebrating the diverse stories and perspectives that made their neighborhood unique. To Karen's delight, the board members listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue as she laid out her plan. Even Martha, the staunchest opponent of the fence, seemed to be wavering, her brow furrowed in deep thought. Finally, Mr. Thompson stood, a small smile playing on his lips. "Karen, I must say, you've put together a remarkably thorough and compelling proposal. The board has discussed it at length, and we believe that with the proper safeguards in place, we can move forward with your artistic fence as a pilot program for the community." A cheer went up from the gathered homeowners, and Karen felt a surge of elation. She had done it. She had not only saved her beloved fence, but she had also paved the way for a more open and expressive community. As the meeting adjourned, Karen found herself surrounded by her neighbors, each offering their congratulations and eager to learn more about the plan. Even Martha, to Karen's surprise, approached her with a begrudging nod of respect. "I still have my reservations," Martha admitted, "but I have to hand it to you, Karen. You've managed to find a way to balance our need for order with your desire for self-expression. It's an admirable feat." Karen smiled, reaching out to shake Martha's hand. "I appreciate your willingness to consider this, Martha. I truly believe that by working together, we can create a community that's not just aesthetically pleasing, but one that truly celebrates the diversity and creativity of its residents." Martha's lips quirked into a small smile. "Well, I suppose we'll have to see how it goes, but for now, I'm willing to give it a chance." As Karen watched her neighbors disperse, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. The journey had been long and arduous, but in the end, she had managed to not only save her beloved fence, but to also inspire a shift in the very fabric of their community. With a renewed sense of purpose, Karen turned her gaze to the vibrant colors of her fence, a smile playing on her lips. "This is just the beginning," she whispered, her heart swelling with the promise of a brighter, more expressive future.